they keep going in the conversation. They allow me to speak Korean. They never say, oh, you don't have to speak Korean with me.
I know English.
They never say anything like that, right? And I've never experienced that with Brazilian Portuguese.
Calling me bad. Calling me bad. Calling me bad.
Hey YouTube, this your girl Amber Gonzalez from the channel Amber Gonzalez TV. Welcome to my YouTube channel. So today the topic is why you can't learn a language. Well, first of all, a lot of you know that I do work from home. I have my own tutoring business online, over 40 students worldwide that book sessions with me. The reason a lot of you cannot learn another language is because you are too afraid to make mistakes. Making mistakes is okay. It's about time I did this video because I tell all my students, like, we all mess up. I make mistakes in all of the languages that I speak. I make mistakes in Spanish, I make mistakes in English. I know, because y'all be correcting my English sometimes. What did I say? When I go yesterday, I blah blah blah. I said that in one of my videos, like, oh yeah, when I go yesterday, and somebody was like,
It's when I went yesterday, Amber. When I went yesterday.
okay girl, like I make mistakes in English, Spanish, Chinese, Korean, Portuguese, and I'm sure whatever future languages that I speak and hold jobs in the future, I will make mistakes in that too. So don't be afraid to make mistakes when it comes to languages, and you definitely shouldn't let that hold you back or stop you from talking to people in the language, which brings me to my next point. You can't be afraid to make conversation with native speakers, with people. Like, I want you guys to realize something. Those of you, especially that are in the United States, right, or a European country, when people come to your country and they're speaking English, a lot of foreigners in the world, a lot of people around the world, they learn the English language. Do they speak it perfectly? I want you to think about that for a second. No, they don't. But yet they still obtain bilingual jobs in the US or Europe. They still obtain high-paying jobs with the government, and sometimes their English is not the best, and nobody is sitting around ridiculing them about that. So I want you to think about that for a second before you think, oh, I'm not going to practice Spanish, I'm not going to say this in Korean, I'm not going to practice because I don't want to sound stupid. You know how many people sound stupid when I call customer service and I'm trying to handle a bill?
Bruh, what are you saying, bruh?
I don't sit there and be an a-hole to him, right? I let him keep talking in his English. Obviously, he's practicing. So it's the same thing. Don't be so hard on yourself. Just realize that people make mistakes. That is the difference between people that progress in languages, people that are here on YouTube that speak like 4, 5, up to 20 languages, and they speak it very confidently and they speak it at a communication level that we're able to have conversations with people. The reason of that is because we're not afraid of making mistakes. And we sure enough don't let no person that was born and raised in the States and their parents are the true natives, right? I don't let those people try to discourage me. Oh, you make this correction, it's actually like this.
Girl, bye.
So one thing that I always tell my students, they know this, I tell anyone, if you're learning another language and you're afraid to talk to the other people of that language, you're afraid to be bold and speak with them, it is going to be very difficult for you to progress in that language. And I say this because, sure, we can learn languages, right? I can sit in a classroom and the teacher is teaching a lesson.
These are the phrases, this is the verb, this is how you conjugate.
These are how teachers teach in classrooms, right? So I can sit in a classroom and sure, after that 1 hour class, of course I can say I learned new words. Sure, I learned new phrases. But that does not mean I learned how to talk to people. So Ambi, how do I talk to people? I used this as an example before. If you're at a nail shop, right? And let's say you're learning Vietnamese language. 98% of nail shops are owned by Vietnamese people. Pretty much. And it might be 99. I've never been in a nail salon and it wasn't Vietnamese people that owned the shop. So you know, if you're learning the Vietnamese language, going to nail shops is the perfect place for you to practice the language with the people, right? So when you go in, don't be afraid to say in Vietnamese, xin chào. Don't be afraid to say hello. Don't be afraid to ask them, how are you, in Vietnamese. Sure, it will make their day. They'll be like, oh, how did you learn that? Or, oh, do you have Vietnamese husband? Like that's the main thing they always want to know. And that's because you shock them when you speak it, right? The bottom line is you said it and they understood you, so that gives you the confidence to keep going. When you're sitting down and you're doing your nails, spark up a conversation. Ask them different phrases that you might have learned in the classroom, such as, you know, where are you from? Even though you know they're from Vietnam. Do you have family here? You like the US, right? Do you like living here? So just little things like that. And we're going to say that you haven't gotten that far in your classroom to utilize the verb live or want. So then just learn it before you go to the nail shop and practice it, right? So that's just an example of how you can practice the language. Now let's say you're learning Spanish, which a lot of you are. Vamos a decir que quiere aprender español. So if you are someone that want to learn Spanish, and you already take classes or whatever, or you're learning phrases here and there, or you're self-studying, whatever the case, you can learn all day, but you won't be able to speak it until you're bold enough to talk to people. So when you go into the Spanish supermarket, or let's say Mexican market, Cuban market, whatever, Spanish-speaking language market, go in there and talk Spanish to them. Now, I totally get it. Sometimes, especially in the States, you will run across a lot of people that you try to talk Spanish to them, they'll be like, oh, I speak English, or oh, that's so cute, or they just don't want to talk Spanish with you, right? But I've mentioned before in the past, you have to practice with people that barely can speak English, because they're the ones that are truly immersed in their own culture. They probably just been here for a few years, so they're still getting their feet wet. So they're going to appreciate you speaking Spanish more than someone that was like born and raised in the States. You know, they oftentimes you try to speak Spanish with those Spanish speaking people, they're going to be like, oh, I can speak English. You don't have to speak Spanish to me. Trust me, it happens so much. So much. Ask anybody that's learning Spanish, they'll tell you this happens a lot in the States. So it ends up discouraging people that are learning the language, because sometimes they feel like, well, they didn't give me an opportunity to speak this language. So you have to take that opportunity. Just keep talking in Spanish, right? So especially if you're in a Spanish-speaking restaurant, if you're in a Spanish-speaking supermarket, wherever you are, a Spanish-speaking church, then obviously the language spoken there is Spanish. So it's not weird for you to go in there speaking Spanish. Like, I remember one time, I use it as an example, I was in Atlanta, Georgia, and I was at a restaurant, right? And I was at this Mexican restaurant on Buford Highway. And I'll never forget this, and it happens a lot, right? Usually taquerias are like super Mexican, so half of the staff don't speak English anyway, which is perfect, and which is why I like going there, because I could practice Spanish. So I get there and I sit down and I order in Spanish, right? So I tell the lady, she was like, oh yes, what would you like to eat? So this was someone that was younger, obviously born in the States or whatever. She spoke perfect English, and she's like, yeah, what would you like to eat? And I said, oh, quiero 2 tacos de carne asada con queso derretido, blah, blah, blah. And she was like, oh, you don't have to speak it in Spanish. Just tell me what you want.
Just tell me what you want.
And I was thinking like, yo, what is up with the Spanish-speaking people that's born in the States? Like, why don't they ever want to give somebody a chance to talk Spanish with them? You know, it hurt my feelings. And back then, I was real young. I was like 19 years old. So stuff like that really hurt my feelings. And I'm like, hold on, girl. Like, I work as an interpreter at a medical office.
Put some respect on my Spanish, okay?
I didn't say that, of course. But I was just thinking, like, clearly this girl thought that it was a burden for me to speak Spanish. Yo entiendo todo, yo puedo conversar con todo el mundo en español, no entiendo el problema. So I know I have an accent or whatever, but to just totally be like, oh, you don't have to speak Spanish, you can just talk English. But she was taking everybody else's order in the restaurant in Spanish. So I don't know, stuff like that happens all the time. So I always tell my story to my students when they tell me, I try talking Spanish with people, but they don't want to talk to me. Listen, they're not going to. So it's up to you to practice with people that can't speak English, right? Or barely can speak English, because those are the people that are going to appreciate you, even take an interest in their language, and they're going to allow you to continue your sentence and allow you to practice the language. So that pretty much tackles the problem that people might have trying to speak Spanish. Now, I must say, whenever I'm speaking Korean or Portuguese language, the people, rather they were born in the States or born in their country, they still keep talking to me in the language, and I love that, right? I only had a problem with Spanish. For some reason in the US, it was the Spanish-speaking people that were like Americanized that never wanted to talk Spanish with me. So, and that's fine. They do it to everybody. All my students go through this. And if you're learning Spanish, I know you dealt with it. So it's fine. But I noticed the difference. Whenever I talk Korean, if I'm in a Korean restaurant and the waiter or the server is Korean, it don't even matter if they were born in the States or born in Korea or raised in the States or raised in Korea. They are immediately shocked that I can order my food in Korean, and they're usually intrigued by that. They're like, oh, they keep going in the conversation. They allow me to speak Korean. They never say, oh, you don't have to speak Korean with me.
I know English.
They never say anything like that, right? And I've never experienced that with Brazilian Portuguese. Actually, I used to get my food from this Brazilian supermarket in Marietta, Georgia. And I remember I went in there a few times. At the time, my Portuguese was like, you know, just learning. It didn't even matter. I would go in there and butcher the language. Like, I'll be messing up, making all types of mistakes. But guess what? The people there, they kept talking to me in Portuguese. That was so motivating because it didn't make me feel bad. You can't be afraid to talk to people to practice the language. That is how you become fluent. That is how you become good enough to hold conversations. That is how you become more confident in the language. Don't be afraid to make mistakes. Everybody make mistakes in the languages that they speak. If they wasn't even born and raised in the country of that language, don't let them try to make you feel bad because you have grammar issues or you mess up. It don't even matter, okay? Because 9 times out of 10, if you go to South Korea, if you go to Mexico, you can make a whole bunch of errors in that country, and the people are not going to ridicule you for that. Okay, they're just gonna let you be normal and talk and make mistakes. Just like we let foreigners be normal when they talk and mess up English language. We don't sit there and be like, oh, customer service, you said this wrong, because God knows customer service. Ugh, don't get me started. But we don't sit there and make them feel bad. That's all I have for you all for this video. Thank you all for watching. If you have any comments, leave your comments below. Share this video, let me know your opinion, and subscribe to my channel. See you all later. Adios.
Level up.